Stats South Africa released a migration report looking into immigration patterns since 2000. And according to the data they collected, close to 1 million citizens have left the country during the period under review. That report also noted that the number of South Africans returning is not as high as is claimed by state agencies, tax practitioners and international moving companies. So what's the real state of play? Let's talk about it with Chief Director for Demography and Population Statistics, Diego Iturralde. Diego, good morning to you and welcome to the program. You know, this issue of and this practice of people leaving and going to look for a better life elsewhere is a huge issue for South Africans, given as we are faced with, multiple challenges, both from a safety and security perspective to a range of other different issues, mostly relating to service delivery. When you look at stats like this, and you look at the profile that's created by Stats SA through the research they've gathered on, the movement patterns of South Africa, we'll get to the detail in just a moment. But what are your thoughts in the main of this report? What sort of jumped out at you, the report that Stats SA has just released?
Morning, and thank you for having me. This report was really born in 2018 when South Africa became a signatory to the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration. And one of the objectives of that compact was to improve data collection on migration in all its forms. And it was recommended that one of the ways to do that would be to produce these migration profile reports, which looks at migration from a variety of perspectives, looking at data sources from a variety of entities, both nationally, such as from what government departments are collecting, as well as internationally. So this report is really, it's the most comprehensive migration report that we have ever put together, and it is intended to be not only a source of reference, but also a capacity building tool so that various entities responsible for migration governance can use it to make the right decisions, but can also use it to enhance their capacity and understanding into issues around migration.
Well, then talk to us about some of that detail around, some of the push factors for people going and the profile of those who are leaving.
Yeah, so when we are talking about immigration, I think it's important to understand that Statistics South Africa does not count themselves, the people who are emigrating, either by having officials in other countries, or by being stationed at airports or places of departure. Rather, we depend on the censuses and administrative records of other countries who are counting South Africans. Then the United Nations Population Division collates all of this information and every 2 years puts together a report that shows how many people from any country are living in any other country around the world. So we are part of that global community that has contributed towards this by counting the citizens of other countries in South Africa, and other countries are doing the same with regards to ourselves. So from that, we can see that there are about 914,000 South Africans who currently live outside the country, which seems to be a strong predictor of where people go. So people are going to United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and we're also seeing an emerging destination in places like United Arab Emirates and Qatar, but also in non-English speaking countries in Europe, such as Germany and the Netherlands, who are facing skills shortages and are to skilled individuals from amongst other South Africans.
Mm. It's really interesting, Diego, and thanks for that clarity on how you collate a lot of information also that's generated by other agencies in order to start building these comprehensive profiles. When I was growing up, when people were leaving, South Africa, a lot of tradespeople would leave. People like, plumbers and engineers, or people who had a skill in their hands, as my mom used to say. And they would go to specific countries. So Australia seemed to be, a destination of choice. there. It's interesting that these statistics show that New Zealand, for example, has almost tripled in the number of South Africans that are going to reside in New Zealand. Places like Canada become popular for people in the healthcare services. So can you share a little more detail on, why people are going to certain countries, or in terms of skills particularly, or are certain countries making those calls, making South Africans who are leaving South Africa with a particular skill more desirable to the country they want to go to?
Yeah, so I think different countries have got different forced migration. I mean, we can see at the moment in Europe and the US, there's a real tightening, and the migration laws are becoming a lot stricter. But different countries are reaching out to the different types of people, to different types of people, as their labor force requires it. And South Africans are trying to match what are their skills with what are the needs.
Unfortunately, Diego, just like the people we're talking about, the signal keeps coming and going. So unfortunately, I've got to leave it there. But I want to direct our viewers to the release of that report. There's some really interesting information around certain countries where South Africans continue to go: the UK, Australia, the US, Europe, by the way, responsible for almost 40% of the number of South Africans that are leaving the country. So this is really interesting stuff. And if you do have an interest, go ahead and look at the latest report in this regard that's been released by Stats SA. And this is their migration profile report for the country. It was released last week. Makes for interesting reading.